Hi friends, sorry it's been a few days since I posted. Unfortunately, I lost my voice. We were away for a little bit, and so I hope you weren't too disappointed in the length of time, but if you want to catch up, I'm in the middle of telling my story, and so I hope you'll view the past posts and get up to speed. But I talked about in the earlier posts about how my parents divorced when I was 5, and also spoke about the godly heritage that I had from my maternal grandparents. My mom ended up remarrying when I was 8 years old. And she married a man, my stepfather, who actually had good influence in some ways in our home. He had been raised in a Christian family, and so really for the first time as a family, we began attending a Bible-believing church. And so that was a real change for us as a family. After my mom remarried, my oldest sister moved out of the home when she was just 14, ended up never coming back. And so we really lost contact with her through the years until actually I was an adult. That left my middle sister, who's 4 years older than me, and me at home. So as a result of my stepdad's influence, as I said, we began attending a Bible-believing church, and it was really through that church that for the first time in my life, I heard about God and a Jesus, God's Son, who loved me and who had died on a cross for my sins. And I was a very, I would say, motivated child. I was really into performance, and I remember as a little girl memorizing lots of gospel songs and Bible verses because we got rewarded when we did that. And so I really just was all gung-ho in terms of understanding what all this meant about this Jesus. And at the age of about 10, I got into a class with other 5th graders, and my Sunday school teacher was a really wonderful, godly woman that actually I've written about in some of my posts on my blog. Her name was Dottie Stevenson, and Dottie just loved me. She had no idea kind of what was occurring at home, but she just loved me. And I'll tell you more about Dottie a little bit later. But the night that really stood out for me is my sister and me went to church without my parents on a Sunday evening. And there was a visiting evangelist there that night who talked about how Jesus had come down to earth, lived as a man, and died for the sins of the whole world. And that even as, you know, at any age, we have sin, and that was paid for by Jesus' death on a cross, and that 3 days later he rose again. And this evangelist made an invitation and asked those who had never made a decision to accept Jesus into their lives would raise their hand. And I quietly, while sitting next to one of my little girlfriends, I raised my hand that night. And I knew even in that moment that it was a life-changing decision. I didn't understand completely what that meant, but there was such joy that came over me, knowing that there was a God, a personal God, who loved me, who cared about my life. And after the service, they invited all those who'd made a decision to go into a prayer room, and I was met there by this wonderful woman, don't even know her name, but she sat with me and just was so ever, just effervescent in her joy for me, and could hardly contain it, saying that this is the most important decision you will ever make, and Jesus loves you and he knows everything about you. And it just went on, and I had never heard some of these things. She said the angels are rejoicing in heaven over you. Well, as I left the prayer room that night, my sister had been waiting for me, and we got to the car where my stepfather was waiting impatiently in the car. And as soon as we opened the door and I got in, he said very angrily, "Where have you girls been?" And I said, "Dad, I asked Jesus into my heart tonight." And he said angrily, "Well, why didn't you wait until your mother and I were here?" And I ended up just being totally deflated. It wasn't until years later that I was able to even tell him how that he took the most important decision that I would ever make in my life and turned it into something bad. 3 weeks after that event, something very significant occurred. And you'll have to tune in to my next post to find out what that was. I'll see you next time.